Shabbat Shalom, everyone. We have some incorrect information on the screen. So actually today it is Shabbat Bamidbar. Oh, now it's good. Thank you. It's Shabbat Bamidbar, the first chapter of a new book. Our Torah readings were from the book of Numbers, chapter 1, verses 1 to 6. The whole parasha is chapter 1 to chapter 4, verse 20. Haftarah reading came from the prophet Hosea, chapter 2, verses 14 to 23. And the Messianic writings came from a letter, first from First Peter, or I think in our CJB it's First Kepha, chapter 2, verses 1 to 10. And here we are starting a new book of the Torah scroll. You could see it early today, that little gap between the two books as we are continuing through the journey of the Torah. And this one, the Parasha Bamidbar, actually the word Bamidbar is not the first word which you read in the scripture as we heard it today. I'm sure you all paid very good attention. The first word is actually Vayedabar, and he spoke. So those two things of speaking and the wilderness, they're quite closely related. Those two words are close to each other. And what it tells us, it teaches us that God spoke in the wilderness. And those of you who are studying your Hebrew, that the root word, you can hear it in there. There is a link between those two words, because God does speak in dry, dusty wilderness times to us. There is a hidden truth in those words. And it is in the wilderness when Israel had to learn to rely on God and to trust him. We have a new chapter. We will read and learn what has been happening in there. And I think we all know it, but I'll say it here: trusting God in a time of being wilderness, when times are tough, it's not easy. And yet, it was essential for Israel to learn at this time, so they would trust God also in a time of plenty and blessing. Because when there is time of plenty and blessing, our minds are focused on all the good things which we have, and sometimes we forget where those blessings come from. And it was in this hard place of the wilderness that Israel truly learned who their God was and is. These are the times then when we go through them, we ask, does God really care about me, about us, about what is happening? Does he know, understand, or is he bothered about me? And sometimes we even dare to ask if he is still there to hear our painful cries of helplessness and despair. But as we shall see, this parasha is telling us that he fully knows and identifies with each one of us, individuals and families, and also communities. It is often at times of wilderness, this moment of barren place, crisis, when God does break through and speak, changing us, breaking us. And this can be painful. And also when we call to him, putting us back together, humble, transformed, changed, and trusting. How odd is to think that in some ways the wilderness, the barren years, were part of God's overreaching plan for Israel. And I think here we need to reflect on the fact that perhaps it wasn't part of the initial plan. Well, it wasn't. We know that it wasn't. But the original plan has changed because this time in wilderness was necessary for Israel to learn to walk with God and to trust Him. And I think none of us would want to choose the part of walking in wilderness. We all want to go straight into the blessing. That's what we desire. And yet, many of us walk it and have experienced it. And as we read it in the Torah, the wilderness, the desert, became an essential part of Israel's story, of who the nation became. It was in this barren place that Israel would learn the techniques of survival, and not just the practical one, but also survival as a community. So they learned it as individuals, they learned it as families, groups, community. And also it was this time in wilderness which really has forged us as a nation. And above all, in the wilderness, Israel learned to listen to God's voice and to obey. The time in wilderness always brings up one important question. I'm sure if you walked with God for some time, you have asked this question. Does God care when things become tough and when transition time is upon us? And I find it interesting as we start reading through the parasha, and I'm pretty sure you read it all. The first thing which we do, we are in the wilderness. God speaks to us in the wilderness, and the first thing that happens that we hear to do is that we are counted. And there are, as you know, there are two separate counts, censuses, that are taken in the book of Numbers. And that might not sound to you as a lot, given that we in this country also have census on regular basis, and Israel was in the wilderness for some time, as we know. But actually, there are only 9 times throughout the whole Torah when Israel is counted. So every count is significant. And having 2 of them in one book, it means. And so we have a question. Why the count? We heard it again today. The count records the names and tribal affiliations and serve us as a symbolic reminder that God cares for each and every one. His love is such that each is numbered and counted before Him. There are different discussions about the reason for this count. One of which was to realize that actually as a nation, we have grown miraculously during the time in Egypt, despite the slavery and the devastating judgments which happened, the famine, the plagues, and we have exited Egypt as a great multitude. And different debates about numbers, but some of them talk about millions of people. And thinking about it, actually, as a nation, we really didn't need to do the count to realize how much we have multiplied in Egypt. You just had to have a look around, stand up, lift your hand, and see the size of the camp when we were arranged around the tabernacle in the tribal allocations. And God knew how many of us there are, so why count? All of the above, which I mentioned, is good reason, but actually maybe there is another one. And that is the deep love and connection that God has with each and every one of us individually, as families, communities, a nation. The care he has for each one of his people. And to illustrate this point around the count, we need to look at the final time of counting. There will be one more count that is predicted by the prophet Jeremiah. When Messiah comes, he will count us all. In Jeremiah 33:13, it talks about the flocks will pass under the hands of the one who numbers them. Flocks are the people of Israel. At the end of all things, the Messiah will count us all, none of us missing, and none of us misplaced. Just as Yeshua promised in Yohanan 10, verses 27 to 29, he says, "My sheep listen to my voice, I recognize them, and they follow me. And I give them eternal life. They will absolutely never be destroyed, and no one will snatch them from my hands. My Father who gave them to me is greater than all, and no one can snatch them from the Father's hands. I and the Father are one." The message of care and protection for his people was also repeated again by Yeshua in Yohanan 17:12, 18:9. There are 3 times he said this to reiterate this truth of it. I have not lost one of those you gave me. And in case we should ever think that this was only referring to the sheep of the ethnic Jewish flock, we need to remember that Yeshua said also, I have other sheep, not of this fold. And those are the nations, the people who come into the flock of Israel, and they will be counted as his at the end of the times. Does God care? If we take this counting seriously and the meaning and implications, then we can only conclude that yes, he does deeply care. And so the census here reveals the community as they are individuals, collections of individuals, communities of families and tribes and clans. This is people who belong, who have identity together, who have been molded by difficult times and challenges, experienced the pressures of community living, and they still clung together. And there is one more thing. When we read about the census, what did they do? Did they get a questionnaire through the post box? Maybe someone knocked on a door and did the ticks? Actually, no. The Torah tells us that on the first day of the second month, they gathered the whole assembly to state their genealogies by families and clans, recording the names of all those 20 years and old and over, as well as their total numbers. They recorded their names. It was more than just writing it down. They recited their ancestry, state their genealogies. And this is amazing because, you see, this is a society which has strong oral traditions. Those are people who possess the knowledge of their ancestry back many generations, can recite it. They know it by heart. It's in their mind and heart. They know exactly who they are. And they recite the family tree, the ancestry, who are the fathers. And as we know, knowing your ancestry, where you come from, provides people with rootedness. Knows who you are. Even given that this was a purpose of the census, also there is more. Here community that belongs, families, individuals that belong, they connect together, they have roots and history which is shared. They have shared past and they have shared future destiny, which is based on the shared past. So reciting the genealogies and confirming this, the belonging to each other helped community cohesion. Going back through the family tree is not just chant of ancestry, it's a declaration of faith. Every person, collectively as children of Israel, they took upon themselves the name of the patriarch Yaakov, the one who had so dramatically wrestled with God and won, the one who'd been weakened in the flesh, so as to more effectively walk in the spirit and promise and faith. As the family trees were recited, we were also reminded that we all trace back the line to the early times, and his name, Yaakov, was changed to Israel to represent the new relationship that we all have with Adonai. And as we continued with the family tree, we all arrived at one man, the towering of patriarch of faith, Avraham. Avraham Avinu, our father. Remember him, the man who took his family and traveled into unknown lands, not knowing his destination? As we are here, recounting the genealogy, we don't know exactly the destination. And so not just as nation, but as individuals, we have connected with this man whose values in life match so closely with the values of the nation at this moment. And those were us being called out from the nations to be set apart and holy and different, and to undertake a journey of faith to an unknown homeland in the response of faith in God's total ability to meet all his covenantal promises. By reciting the family tree that leads back to Abraham, we would, in our own words, demonstrate that God is true to his word, and we are free, a numerous nation, and on our way back to the land that Abraham was given by God. This recounting was a declaration of faith, history, and above all, identity. And yet, there is another reason which is so critical at this moment of time. See, we left Egypt, but we are not yet in a promised land. It's a time of transition. On one hand, there's still pressing memory of our previous lives and connections, the routines of Egypt, what we knew, even though it was hard and bad, the oppression of slavery, it's something which we knew for generations. At least we had certainty and security to a degree. We knew what is going to happen to us. There was a routine. And we knew what happened to us, how we were compensated for it. But actually, at this moment of time in wilderness, the future is unknown. We have no idea what the life in the promised land will be like, and all of we think and imagine is based on words of promise from God that we have just reconnected and just are learning to know him. It must have felt uncertain, insecure. Who knew what the final destination would be like when we settle in the land? And so all we have was words. We had to trust, we had to have faith. But who could be that sure? We have received the general direction from Moshe, our trusted leader, but what form this final dream would take, who knew? Tracking back through history in this way reminds us where we came from. It gave us the current existence and lives, meaning and purpose, that what might otherwise be a cause of concern and insecurity actually was turned into a statement of solidity. And it is at such moments that we are reminded where we stand. Not for nothing, at such unsettling moments of change, transition, and forward movement to, as yet in undefined goal, we are reminded of the rock on which we stand. This is what the prophets teach us. Prophet Isaiah in chapter 51, he says, "Listen to me, you pursuers of justice, you who seek Adonai, consider the rock from which you have been cut, the quarry from which you were dug." God is our rock. You can find other references to this throughout the scriptures. And the rock doesn't move. It doesn't change. It's stable, reliable, solid, the ground. Where we stand, it has history. And it has proven to be trustworthy. We stand on our historic faith that God of eternity will never change, and his love continues forever. We reminded this to ourselves as we read from the words of Kepha, 1 Peter. Actually, it repeats a verse from Isaiah 28. And again, it talks about a stone, this time a cornerstone. And whoever rests his trust on it will certainly not be humiliated. He is our solid ground, living stone, rejected by people, but chosen by God. And yes, we know in the wilderness everything feels different. It was different, but some things never change. And when we kind of move forward towards the 1st century, it was again a period of uncertainty, a wilderness experience. And then God came to us in Yeshua, and everything changed. It was a moment of change, of transition. Something amazing happened, and our people had to respond to this challenge and understanding of ancient beliefs. They were challenged. We had the nations wanting to know who God is, coming in. We had to review all of our understanding and what God meant by it. Sometimes bewildered, confused. We had to review our understanding of the Torah and how we knew it. Did we understand it correctly? Change is always difficult. It feels unsettling, insecure, scary. And you know, when you are in a period of change and transition, you cannot go back where you came from. It's not an option. You only have to move forward. We worry about the destination because it's unknown and distant. But at times like these, we need to remind ourselves where we came from and our shared history back to Abraham, whose we are if we have genuine faith. The rock we stand on has not moved, and some things never will. And above all, remember what Yeshua said: no one can ever be snatched from his hand. He will not ever let go of you, of us. As hard, challenging, and difficult times may be happening, confusing, everything happening around us, it may seem, he will take us through the transition and out the other side to behold our destination. Does God care? Yes, you bet he does. And that's why he provided us with the Messiah, as he promised. And I will just conclude again with the words of Shimon Kefa when he expands on his understanding about this role. And he says, in order for you to declare the praises of the one who called you out of darkness into his wonderful light, once you were not a people, but now you are God's people. Before, you have not received mercy, but now you have received mercy. And we hold onto this mercy, the promise that God has given us, and trust him. And when the transition is over, we will be secure and know that God is always with us. Amen.